I'm Kimberly Hobbs. I'm Director of Community and Economic Development for your Southern Georgia Regional Commission. We're going to go through our little PowerPoint here. Oh, goodness. So much technology, y'all. I just want you to know we are set up here. Our mission, primarily, is to help with community and economic development throughout the region by helping our local governments identify possible funding sources for the needs that they have identified in their community, often through the comprehensive plan process, which is what Elizabeth just talked about. We'd like to, our economic development jobs, and we'll talk a little more about this in depth, is for the creation of jobs and for the private investment of private companies investing money into the community. And so that's going to be your economic development. Community development is where we assist local governments with meeting their needs for their infrastructure, whether that be water or sewer, street paving and drainage. Oftentimes it can be a community facility like a senior center or a Head Start facility. But the communities have identified their needs, hopefully, through their comp plan process, and then we come in to try and help bring a bank bag with some money to fund those improvements for the community. We are split between the two offices. Myself and one other staff person are in the Valdosta office, and then I have 4 individuals here in the Waycross office. And like I said, we write and submit grant applications for local governments, and if those are funded, we also assist in the administration and implementation of those projects. Right now, we're currently administering 40 projects throughout the region, totaling about $28 million in grant monies and about $48 million in total project cost. Those particular 40 projects right now are benefiting 22,824 people in the Southern Georgia region. I think that's pretty good. I got to remember. There we go. All right. I'm going to talk in acronyms, and I'll do my best to explain the acronym before I fly into it, but no promises. So if I say something you don't understand, please, by all means, say, hey, what was that? And I'll be glad to help and explain it. Our largest pot of money that we tend to deal with is with the Community Development Block Grant, also known as CDBG. This is a federal funding mechanism that comes down from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, to the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, also known as DCA, here in the state of Georgia. DCA takes that large chunk of money and they break it up into several different pots within DCA. Those being, the largest pot being their regular round annual competition for CDBG funds. And that's where local governments would apply for their water, sewer, street paving and drainage facilities. And that happens once a year. Another smaller pot is the CDBG Employment Incentive Program, otherwise known as EIP. That's for your economic development projects that foster private investment and create or retain jobs in the area. And a smaller pot is the RDF. That's the Regional Redevelopment Fund. And basically it's for the elimination of slum and blight in your community. If you, for example, if you have a building in your downtown area that is dilapidated, it's falling down, and the city would like to clean it up and create a pocket park. RDF funds can be used to purchase that property and then demolish that property and take the demolished pieces away. It cannot pay for any pretty stuff, basically, is what DCA says. So if the city wanted to do that and create the pocket park, the creation of the pocket park would be the burden would be on that local government because that's the pretty stuff. So RDF can help you with the ugly. Local money has to help you with the pretty. And then the other very small pot that DCA has is the ITAD, is immediate threat and danger. They've done some reworking of this program, and it is for projects that are of particular urgency or need. It used to be if a local government had a sewer system that had failed and you had you know, bad water surcharging all over, you know, a certain street, and the city didn't have enough money to fix it, we could rush an application through the ITAB program and assist the city with half of the cost, up to $100,000. The tweaking that DCA has done is to make this program and tie it with state or federally declared disasters. So it's no longer for projects that may have occurred out of deferred maintenance, those type of things. If you've got a sewer system or a water system, say your water tank gets blown down by a tornado, God forbid, then we might could apply for ITAD, because that would certainly be either a state or federal disaster. But it's no longer just to assist communities that may have some aging infrastructure that fails in a particularly urgent situation. All right, we're at SGRC 101. This is Grants 101. What is the most important part of obtaining grant funds? You have to identify your need. You must know your need before we go after the grant funds. Basically, you begin with the end in mind. You would like to see Smith Street paved with proper drainage, because the residents there are dealing with poor road conditions and residential flooding. That is seeing the need. You've identified the need, and the end in mind are improvements to benefit those individuals that live in that neighborhood where Smith Street is. So oftentimes a local government say, hey, I saw this grant opportunity, what can we do? But they have no idea what their needs are in that community. It's very hard to pair a fund source with no need. Again, comprehensive plan process is vitally important to identifying the needs in your community. CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, projects, all of those different pots I've talked about, they must benefit low to moderate income individuals, so you have to identify your beneficiaries. If Smith Street is in the golf course, that's not somewhere we're going to be able to apply CDBG funding. And so, you know, you need to know who your target audience is, who your target beneficiaries are, and where they may rank when it comes to income if you're considering CDBG funding. And then you also have to be prepared to show DCA the money. No longer is it that you submit a CDBG application and you put in the bare minimum amount of money and it's funded. Those days are over. CDBG pot from Washington has shrunk. Needs and the cost of those needs in our local governments have increased. Thus you have a shrinking pot and increasing cost. CDBG is extremely competitive. Local governments must be ready to put in a significant amount of money for the project. DCA has a minimum on CDBGs that you have to contribute to the project based on how much you're applying for. But projects that put in the minimum, unless the severity of need is so high, you know, you have people washing down the road with the stormwater, basically, you're not going to get funded with a minimum. So, you know, not only you have to begin with the end in mind, you identify your project, you know who your beneficiaries are, you have a somewhat of an idea of how much the project may cost, you need to go ahead and determine how much your city or county can contribute to said project. Because another thing that DCA is going to look at is the cost per person. And if you have an extremely high cost per person, which means you take the number of beneficiaries and divide the CDBG amount that you're applying for by those number of beneficiaries, that's how you get your cost per person. If your cost per person is out of the range that DCA found was the average the previous year, unless, again, you can show extreme need through photo documentation and written letters, you're not going to get funded. So that's why it's important to really have to weigh all of those variables in order to have a competitive application. And a competitive application is what we here at the Regional Commission are trying our best to help you put together and submit. CDBG funding. These numbers, those of you familiar with CDBG, this may look a little different. This year, DCA has increased the funding limits for single activity and for multi-activity applications. It has been $750,000 for single activity for a number of years. They have increased that to $1 million. And multi-activity went from $1 million to $1,250,000. A multi-activity application is going to be any type of infrastructure plus housing. So say you have a neighborhood that has water needs but also housing needs, that would qualify as a multi-activity. Majority of the applications that are submitted are single activity applications. You know, we talked about the low to moderate income threshold that must be met with CDBG. DCA has determined there are different percentages. If you're applying for if you're applying for community development block grant for any type of infrastructure, 70% is the low to moderate income threshold. So 70% of the beneficiaries of that project must meet low to moderate income thresholds, which are set separately for each county by HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we provide surveys to the community to help determine that low to moderate income threshold. Economic development projects, the beneficiaries for those projects, 51% of those beneficiaries must be low to moderate income. And for housing, whether it's rehabilitation or reconstruction housing projects, 100% of those beneficiaries must be low to moderate income. Y'all stop me if you have any questions. Here are the type of projects, I mentioned them earlier: street paving and drainage. Did you have a question? Oh, just a comment? Okay. Street paving and drainage, water and sewer buildings that we discussed, and then neighborhood revitalization. The neighborhood revitalization would be rehabilitation or reconstruction of homes in a neighborhood. Now, the annual competition due date this year, it has been April the 1st for bootkoodles of years, and then COVID hit and things started changing at DCA, and so the later deadline that they imposed during COVID has held, and so our deadline for CDBG this year is June the 3rd at 11:59 p.m. It is an online submission through DCA's portal. There are several threshold requirements that absolutely must be met by the June 3rd deadline. This is non-negotiable. If these particular things aren't met, DCA won't even review your application. They just push it aside. They may toss it in the trash. I really don't know, but they don't look at it. So these threshold requirements are important. You must have completed your professional procurement for engineering and for a grant administrator if for some reason that I can't ponder you were not using the SGRC to write your grant. You would have to procure an administrator as well. That must be completed by June 3rd. Completion of tribal consultation must be completed by June 3rd. That is a part of the environmentals where we take the project area and a brief project description and submit it to Indian tribes that that have been identified to have been at some point in your area. The proposed CDBG project must be in your service delivery strategy. So in addition to comp plan, we have to have it listed in your service delivery strategy. And your service delivery strategy has to be done, unless it's time to renegotiate and you've not passed that deadline. Your service delivery strategy must have been agreed upon and adopted by the local governments. Your qualified local government status, you must have had all of your reporting data, your comprehensive plan done. You must be a qualified local government to get CDBG funds. And if you're not qualified local government on June 3rd, again, your application's gone. What can affect QLG status? Comprehensive planning and SDS. Also the GOMI, the Government Management Indicator Survey. If that's behind, if you haven't submitted that, you're not QLG, your application is out. Also the Report of Local Government Finance, that must be up to date. If that is not up to date, then your application is gone. And these are all by June 3rd. Also your audit must be in compliance with the Department of Audits. You must not be behind schedule on your audits. If you are, on June 3rd, out the door. And if you are a community with a local revolving loan fund that you control locally, that must be in compliance with DCA's rules and regulations as well. Now, say you hit all these thresholds on June 3rd. Yay, your application is accepted, and they start reviewing and start scoring. DCA checks all of this again on July 1st. So even if you have a great application and your application is scored highly and you're on the track for funding, if any of these thresholds are missed by the July 1st deadline, say you had an audit due June 30th, and so you didn't submit it, well, they're going to contact Department of Audits on July 1st and say, hey, are these local governments in compliance? And if you're not, boom, your application is gone again. The DCA has gotten extremely strict about these threshold requirements, and so we are trying our best to guide our local governments to be able to meet these requirements so that your application is not thrown in the trash. Any questions on that compliance? I know it's a lot. Let's talk a little bit about economic development, particularly EIP, which is the Employment Incentive Program through the Department of Community Affairs. Y'all remember this guy? You younger folks probably don't. But some of those that are my age might remember this free money guy. Well, I'm here to tell you that none of the programs that the Regional Commission works with has free money for private for-profit businesses. There are no grants in the state of Georgia to private for-profit businesses. There can be, however, a grant to a local government for private for-profit business. So, for example, you have an industry that wants to locate and they're going to double your capacity for sewer flow is not adequate because they're about to double it. We can apply for CDBG EIP funding, Employment Incentive Program funding, to increase your capacity, your wastewater capacity. And that's based on jobs creation and private investment. DCA's rule of thumb is approximately $10,000 in grant funds per each job created or retained. So if you have 50 jobs, your company's creating 50 jobs, then we could apply for $500,000 CDBG EIP. The other rule of thumb is it must be a dollar for dollar grant money to private investment. So if you're applying for $500,000, then your company must be investing $500,000 in their facility, whether it's construction, acquisition, machinery, equipment, that type of thing. So those are your rule of thumbs for your EIP funding. We can fund all the same things that we fund with regular round CDBG, whether that be road and sewer, water, street paving and drainage. All of those are eligible as long as you've met that private investment in jobs creation or retention thresholds. There's a stumbling block on economic development projects that can make a project not work, and that's the environmental compliance aspect of that. We at the RC must have completed the environmental review and have gotten what's called a release of funds letter from DCA, which doesn't mean your grant's been funded. What it means is your environmentals are clear. Why it's not called that, I don't know. But we have to have that letter in hand before any dirt can turn. And that does not just mean dirt for our road project. That means dirt for the company as well. The company cannot turn dirt on their property until we're finished with environmentals. So what's important is when you have a whisper of an economic development project in your community, it may or may not pan out. You call us early because we can get started on that environmental process, which takes 90 to 120 days, just in case, and be finished with it in case that company says, yeah, we're coming. If we're already done with our environmental compliance, then there are no restrictions on that company turning ground. So it's just important. I mean, look, yeah, a lot of times we have meetings on economic development projects that don't pan out. That's just the way it is. I'd rather us be there early and it not pan out than us be there late and it be a viable project and we can't help you with grant money because we can't get the environmental done because the company wants to break ground in 30 days. So early is the best for economic development projects. Here's an example of an EIP project that we recently completed in Lowndes County. This is the Arglash Yamamura Company in Lowndes County. This is the first glass manufacturing facility this company has in the United States. They decided to locate on a piece of property that was not developed, so they needed water and sewer and a road access into that property. The city and county worked together to fund that water and sewer. They got a special allocation from the state of Georgia for some of that, and then we applied for EIP funding, employment incentive funding, to build that road so that that company could be accessed not only by its employees but also its trucks, shipping trucks going in and out. This project, we got $750,000 for the road. This project resulted in over 150 new jobs in Lowndes County and $120 million private investment. And again, we got there early enough that we were able to finish the project, or finish our environmentals before this company wanted to break ground. And it was close because they were on a fast track. So again, please call us early. Remember when I said there are no grant monies for private? This is the, well, sort of there is, okay? We can do a grant to a local government and who can in turn loan that grant money to the company, to the private company. It can be for acquisition of land or building. It can be for machinery and equipment. But that's how we can kind of skirt that gratuity clause that the state of Georgia has. This is a project we did a long time ago, Mr. Al, in Alma-Baker County.
They pay every month.
And we were able to help Titan acquire this building and property with $284,000 in EIP monies. And then we were also had additional financing through Michelle's division, who you'll hear from later. I don't remember if, well, I think that SBA 504 and 7A is not sure exactly.
Started as SBA. And
Right. So this project needed some layered financing. So we had local financing, we had CDBG EIP financing, we had SBA financing, and then of course we had company money going into it as well. And they needed assistance in purchasing this property. That the layered financing was a key component to this project, and that's something that can be, we can put together a deal to get a company what they need. But again, EIP was not a grant to the company, it was a grant to the city of Alma, who in turn loaned it to Titan, and as you heard Mr. Al say, they make their payments regularly. What's the good thing about making their payments regularly? Those principal and interest payments on CDBG EIP loans go directly to the local government. They never go back to DCA unless the local government doesn't do what they're supposed to do with it. That money can start or recapitalize a local revolving loan fund. That payment, the principal and interest, goes into that revolving loan fund. The local government establishes a loan committee, and that money can continue to be loaned out in the community to foster private investment and jobs creation. And that the city of Alma rotates that money. There are many other communities that are rotating this money into their cities and counties to continue with jobs creation and private investment. Now, if a community starts an RLF and they don't use that money in their community, remember when I was talking about some of those compliance issues, threshold issues for CDBG? A community can't just hold on to their RLF money just forever. DCA expects that money to turn in the community and continue to create jobs. So if an RLF is not in compliance with DCA's rules, DCA can come back in and say, hey, y'all aren't doing anything with this money, so we're taking it back and we're going to do something with it. So it's important, if you do have an EIP direct loan And those payments and interest, the principal and interest is coming back to your community and capitalizing your revolving loan fund. It is important that that is an active revolving loan fund and that it's continuing to work in your community.
Let me say a word about that.
Sir?
Can I say a word?
Oh, of course.
It's worked well for us. That's part of it. We've built about $800,000 into those funds.
Mm-hmm.
And they've helped over 25 other businesses to be reinvested, get started, and our compliance now. And we've had to foreclose on about 3, but we always have security. But you have to make a report twice a year.
That's right.
On that, and you got to stay within certain margins.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mr.
It's been
Brown.
excellent for us.
Great, great, glad to hear it. Another fun story, yeah? Oh, are you telling me time?
Yeah.
Was that a time? Okay.
Just trying to stretch now.
She's telling me time's up. So I'll just talk really quickly about One Georgia. One Georgia is through Department of Community Affairs as well. It is state-funded programs, not federal money. And we've been using it to do a lot of industrial park capacity building in southern Georgia. There's a list of recently awarded projects. I do want to point out the top one. That's the, let me make sure I get their name right. Southeast Georgia Regional Development Authority. That's Appling, Bacon, Jeff Davis, and Pierce counties. That joint development authority has an industrial park in Pierce County that needed rail service. So we were able to do capacity building rail into that industrial park to serve future industries. So that was a unique project. The remaining projects are for street pavement and drainage, purchase of property, those types of things, water and sewer installation. And then real quick, another economic development fund source would be EDA, that's Department of it's the Economic Development Administration through the Department of Commerce. These are federal funds. This is a project we got years ago for the city of Nashville. We ran gas from Nashville all the way up to Alapaha to serve this lumber company. And the reason we were able to do it is because the city of Nashville owns their gas. It is a municipal gas provider because these funds have to go to publicly owned infrastructure. So the gas is unique. That not a lot of cities own their own gas, but this was a great project where they did. We currently have 2 pending EDA applications right now for multi-infrastructure improvements in 2 communities. And that includes every type of infrastructure you can think of, gas, water, sewer, and road. So we're very hopeful that those will be funded soon. I'm done. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you for your good service. You got a great batting average.
Thank you, Mr. Al. We try. All right.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and take the